All right, Vikram. I can also call you Vicky for the entire session. Thanks for coming over. Vicky, this is one of our firm initiative wherein we want to share our experience learning with the entire industry from our experiences, the way we can do it. So that is one of our initiatives, and thanks for participating in that initiative. And the today's session will be more about someone who, as a finance professional, starting his or her journey, and how they can land up as a CFO, which is like the topmost highest position of any company. And then basically what are the learnings if someone is already a CFO, whether they should come or join a startup, because you have such a rich experience over the last decade in terms of the startup journey, do's and don'ts in startups. So that is all someone who can learn from today's discussion. So thanks for coming over. So the how we can start, Vicky, is like we can talk about your journey, maybe your introductions, how's your interest into finance crop up, and then why you landed up such a highest position now.
Sure. No, thank you for having me here and Shine India and you for such a wonderful initiative where many of us in the industry can learn from insights from each other. So just if I talk about my journey, I started my career with one of the large conglomerates in real estate sector. So it was a young arm in a larger conglomerate which eventually got listed in year 2015. So when I joined the team, it was a team of 6. I was the 6th employee in that team. So you can say that I started my career with a startup, though it was part of a large conglomerate. And the business was traditional, it was a real estate business. So having worked for that company soon after completing my studies, having worked with for around 6 to 7 years with that company, which eventually got listed in 2015, I started working with another conglomerate in the same business, that is real estate business. And having worked for around 10 years in real estate sector with such conglomerates, in year 2020, I decided to work for startups. It was a different time actually. In 2016, the government of India started Startup India program when startups got a formal recognition. Right. Many of my friends joined startup, and I really found it exciting to work with a younger company which is working on different ideas, unconventional businesses. So that really, I found it really exciting, honestly. There was no other reason. Many of the friends told me that it is a risky proposition as compared to working with a conglomerates where I was working earlier, and work-life balance may not be there, etc., etc. Multiple such notions prevail even today. So it was a tough decision, but then I decided to work with startups in year 2020. Till now I have been working with very young startups, and it has been an enriching journey. Just to mention, a large part of it has gone with food companies, food and beverage companies.
I've seen that.
For around 2 years I was with an e-commerce company, which was again like 95% of business was coming from food and beverage industry. It was an aggregator, food tech aggregator basically. So, but it has been an enriching journey. It has been a wonderful experience, and I really, I'm happy with the decision that I made in 2020.
Very nice. So, just a step back, Vicky, is like from your childhood days, once you completed your, education, the basic education, rather a schooling education. So, how is it like you are from the beginning into the commerce world, or it was a mixed match? Because at that time I remember commerce versus engineering is the topmost choice which was given to us as from our parents at times. So is it like you were liking commerce from the beginning, or how it is? How did your interest came up in this finance world?
Yes, sure. So there are multiple factors that led me to choosing the commerce as my area of study or education. I was in Gujarat, so Gujarat has always been business state, so as to say. And commerce was always a preferred choice for many students there as compared to, let's say, engineering or science in that part of the country. So that is one reason. The other reason, I come from a business family. Like everyone in my family is in business in their own small or big ventures. So ever since childhood, we were taught that if you understand the business and finance well, the chances are high that you will live a happy and prosperous life. So this was another reason. Third reason is whenever the discussions were happening in the family, which is more a subset of the second reason that I mentioned, that whenever the discussions were happening in the family that okay, now prices are whatever business my father was in, he was in edible oil business, etc. We discussed in the family that okay, prices are rising and hence this year we will go for a trip, we will do this, we'll buy that, etc. So and then at that time I always wondered why these prices change actually. क्यों prices change होती हैं and they are impacting our life so deeply. So that question always led me to think how can and somebody then said that okay, answers to these questions lie in economics. And then when I was introduced to economics in grade 11, when we studied the how the price determination happens, what is perfect competition, oligopoly, monopoly, law of demand, law of supply, law of diminishing marginal utility, etc. So I really found them really fascinating. And that was the time when I decided to pursue the career in business administration / finance.
Right. So this is the reason. I mean, because you have chose to be in food and beverage business because since your childhood you are too much into somewhere or other related to
the food. Yes. That's on a food is not really by choice. The choice was startup, the young companies. So after working for an e-commerce company, I joined a cloud kitchen company, cloud kitchen business, a novel business, a different segment within food industry. So these are, I won't say very traditional businesses. Right. So working with startup was more of a motivation than working for food and beverage.
So do you really think the cloud kitchen concept nowadays, the quick commerce, that too into a food business, right? So do you think it has changed a lot, the food and beverage industry, the way they were thinking 5-10 years back to do a business in food and beverage? Do you think that this two disruptions, quick commerce and cloud kitchen concept, has changed the way of the food and beverage industry as a whole?
See, quick commerce is actually evolving. We don't know where it will land. A few days back, one of the large food tech companies in India has actually stopped the services of delivering within 15 minutes. They started delivering in 15 minutes, but they have shut their services, I think, 8-10 days back. Right. So I think, however, the other large player is continuing to do that. So I think it's too early to say whether quick commerce will, how significantly it will impact the food and beverage business. It's too early to comment. That is one. Correct. Cloud kitchen is certainly a different ball game. It's much different from the traditional food and beverage, the restaurant industry where you go, you have food, and cloud kitchen is a completely different model, largely dependent on aggregators. Very few players have their own sales channels, say their own mobile applications or website. Correct. Even the large players get their, more than 50% of their business comes through aggregators, heavily dependent on aggregators. So it's a different ball game, I would say. But having said that, cloud kitchen caters to different segment of customers, different segment of needs versus a restaurant. We go to a restaurant for different reasons on different occasions. We order food from cloud kitchens on different occasions for different reasons. Right. So I would say these are two different markets, not necessarily competing with each other, probably complementing each other. The restaurants nowadays are, selling through aggregators, right? So I think in that sense, delivery, let's not call it cloud kitchen, but delivery has actually been helpful to the food and beverage industry or restaurants. Correct. But yes, cloud kitchen and restaurants, I would say, would continue to operate in two different markets, I would say, because the customer segment, the needs are different.
Because one is purely on the delivery side.
Yes.
One is the restaurant business or the restaurant setup is more majorly food, experience, celebrations.
Yes.
Something if someone has to do outside home, that is what the restaurant is.
Yes. But again, my experience is that investors are more interested in cloud kitchen business because of its scalability, higher return on capex, sales to capex ratios. They are much better in cloud kitchen.
So explain more how it is better, the restaurant business versus the cloud kitchen. How investors, from the perspective of investors' perspective.
See, in restaurant business, it's a capital intensive, labor intensive business. Cloud kitchen business is certainly labor intensive, but it's not so capital intensive as it is in case of restaurants. You need huge amount of capital, right location, etc. for restaurants. Even the labor cost is relatively higher in case of restaurants. There is a lot of front end staff, there is a lot of back end staff as well, kitchen staff as well. In cloud kitchens, you don't need any front end staff, right? Front of the house, what we call in the industry.
Okay.
So unit economics is much better in case of cloud kitchen, and therefore scalability is much higher than as compared to a restaurant business, because the amount of capital required for starting or operating a cloud kitchen is much different from that required for
Is it less or more?
It is in cloud kitchen much less.
Much less.
Yes,
okay.
much less than
because of the location. There is no as such a priority for a location.
You need not to have a very prime location.
Yeah.
You need not to have any very prime real estate for operating a cloud kitchen. Of course, it should be a locality where there is enough demand for the product. It has to be in the right catchment.
Right.
But it need not to be in a very fancy place where you pay very high rentals, etc.
You need to create you don't need to create a setups, right?
Exactly.
In the cloud kitchen.
Exactly. And staff cost is also less. So, but one important factor which should be noted here is you pay a huge commissions to aggregators. So that actually compensates a lot. Compensates for the cost that you save in rents or
basically they are totally dependent on the aggregators or the delivery partners. That's it, right? Otherwise they can't do it on their own. Till the time it is a popular brand or
exactly. There are many popular brands who are getting a lot of 20-30% of their business from their own websites or app, etc. Domino's is also a good example.
Yeah, exactly.
They get a lot of business from their own app, but there are very few such brands. But largely they have to be dependent on aggregators. So that is one, I would say, drawback of cloud kitchen model. But other than that, from an investor point of view, cloud kitchen is certainly more investable business than a restaurant business.
Because restaurant is highly capital intensive.
Highly capital intensive, labor intensive.
Right. So are you a foodie by chance?
Yes, I am.
So which cuisine you?
I prefer Indian cuisine.
Indian cuisine.
Yes.
So do you also cook?
I don't cook. Unfortunately, not.
So what do you like in Indian basically?
Indian,
is it like because what I read somewhere is for food, for someone food is nutrition more, someone who is liking taste more, nutrition second. So what is your mix?
In fact, my own experience suggests that all of these people reside in us only. Like sometimes we are health conscious, sometimes we only prefer taste. For example, I often order a pizza with a lot of cheese along with Diet Coke. So I think all these characters stay within us only. So, there are very few individuals who are always health conscious and prefer only healthy food. I don't think it's practical also for any of us to do. But I personally prefer, all Indian cuisine, let's say North Indian, South Indian, Gujarati.
Right.
So, I like all of them.
Very nice, very nice. So, let's, Vicky, talk about in terms of, because you have mentioned from 2015, 2020, you have worked on large conglomerate into the real estate, and then your journey has been into food and beverage. So, when you were mentioning like it was a very decisive decision in terms of deciding whether to go into the startups or the large conglomerates. So what are those thoughts? When someone is there already into the finance field, have built up something very strong, because real estate is equally complicated market, right? So someone has done the complication. So what are the questions which you think which someone should at least take care of, when they have to start their journey in startup companies?
So I think the question is, when they are choosing to work with a startup, what are the key things they should keep in mind before stepping into that journey?
You are right. You are right.
No, I think the most important thing is it is a risky journey. Like there are many startups who have, where we have seen they had to do downsizing, they had to ask the staff to leave, etc. for multiple reasons. After so-called funding winter started, we have seen many such instances. Also, the success rate for startups is less than 10%. There are many data points that suggest that 10 out of 100 startups succeed. right? 90 sometimes, so 90 don't succeed. There are multiple data points globally, right? So it is risky decision for any finance professional when they choose to work with a startup from a conglomerate. So I think that is one thing they should bear in mind. And as a finance professional, one thing I would suggest, that if you don't have any fixed liability, fixed obligations, let's say if you have loan repayments or such other things, then only you should make such tough calls. Otherwise,
what is a thrill actually then? Because
no, I mean I'm coming to that. But there are multiple multiple better things as compared to, let's say, conglomerates. Here, a learning curve just shoots up. Like you learn a lot every day as compared to when you are working with a large corporate or a large MNC or whatever. There you get to work on very limited set of things. If I'm looking after taxation, I will take care of taxation, because that's how they are organized, they are structured. They can't afford to give every finance professional everything to work on. It's not possible for such large organizations. If you are given MIS, if you are given taxation, if you are given financial reporting, you continue to work on that, and that's how it is structured. That's the beauty of those structures. There is nothing good or bad about it. But in startups, the beauty is you get to work on everything. If you are a finance professional in a startup, you will get to work on setting up systems, you setting up internal control procedures, to doing everything whatever comes in, borrowing funds, talking to consultants, working on IPOs. You get to do multiple things, and that's the fun of it. Like your learning curve just shoots up to the roof. That's a fun of it. That's the thrill of it. So I think that's where startups attract a lot of talent. Also, right? Because despite being a risky, riskier job as compared to the PSU jobs or MNC jobs. So I mean, learning is, I think, what differentiates startups from the conglomerates.
Large conglomerates.
Yes, and that's how they are structured. That's by design. Like if you work there, you get to work on everything. Like you literally have to work like an entrepreneur.
Right. So it's like, because sometimes what when I have to start my journey also. So I was being told that no, you have to do a specialization in something, right? So in fact, I have learned over the period of time myself that no, that one thing cannot make you a good professional. So I often tell to my team also that you have to have a good professional. So you have to, I mean, the breadth of the subject has to be extended. It's not that if you're doing, let's say in consulting, if they are doing only audit, so audit can succeed you to the highest ladder. I mean, in this highly competitive world, highly competitive market, where changes are happening, so I mean daily, day and night, right? So I often tell to my team also that you have to do something related to it. You can't restrict yourself to only audit, for example, or any advisory, only restricted to that particular set. Because 20 years back, when I was told that no, you have to join Big Four only if you want to see a success. So I don't know from where this Big Four concept has started, but yes, they are dominating. But the problem is, at the same time, which I think, in my terms, if I am allowed to say also, it is highly, that thing is that they just restrict to one particular aspect. That is important up to an age, but right, what I feel is it is more important is to have a breadth of the subject. You should learn a lot of things adjacent to it. You can't restrict yourself to one particular domain. I think the same thing you are saying that
exactly, but I think it's more about personal choice. Like developing expertise in one particular domain or field is equally important. And if you're working for a startup, you get to work on multiple things, and that in itself is an expertise that you can work on multiple things simultaneously under pressure with limited resources.
You are right.
This itself is an expertise, I would say. But I mean, it's more about, I think, personal choice.
No, that's okay. I totally agree. But yes. Yeah, you are rightly said, it's a personal choice. It comes with stress, it comes with extra efforts.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you feel more confident because you are not holding back yourself to one particular thing.
Absolutely.
And that is the switch or the trigger which you were talking about, no, when you have to shift from large conglomerate to the startup journey. So explain more. I mean, it is quite interesting in terms of startup. Like one is you get an opportunity to work on various field, rather, even if you are doing a finance and tax. So within finance and tax, it is very wide. So what more challenges or a thrill rather which a startup CFO feel around?
See, I think every startup, at that stage continues to evolve, right?
Yeah.
You have continuously have to build systems and processes. Sometimes one of the startups where I was working, it was COVID time, and they completely had to switch their business model from the business model in which I had joined, right? So I got an opportunity to set up control systems, procedures for that new business.
True.
Right? You have to work with product team, you have to work with marketing team, etc., and ensure that all the systems, controls, processes are in place for that newly started business, which had to start overnight, right? Because of the need of the business. This is one example, but in startup things continue to change, and you have to be very dynamic to keep pace with those changes, right? Let's say, and then you don't have traditional sources available with you. For example, when I was with a conglomerate, we had SAP, we had everything set, systems, processes. You have, whenever you want to borrow, go to the banks, you have your traditional models and everything, and you borrow. Here you don't have banks available for borrowing, right? You don't have cash flows, you don't have assets, you have to go to venture debt for borrowing, etc. And it's a completely different challenge to work on such things. Let's say setting up controls, procedures for continuously evolving business. There are several startups who had to change their business model, the idea they were working on during their journey. So as a finance professional, you have to keep pace with everything, right? The tax laws applicable to that model are different, the internal controls you need for that model are different. So I think you evolve as a professional as well as a person, as an individual as well. I think you grow a lot when you work in such a dynamic environment.
So all right, so Vicky, I mean, suppose if I am a CFO and I have to decide, I have an opportunity, let's say in some of the startups, which is a growing startup, not well established or large startup company, and I have decided, okay, my known risk can be the business model of that startup is sustainable. I think the business is sustainable, and then I am okay to take all those multitasking or challenging roles within a CFO domain, right? What else? I mean, these are like two major aspects which you think which a CFO has to decide when they have to start their journey as a CFO in a startup company.
No, as I said, first of all, you should introspect whether I am prepared to join that startup from multiple. There are multiple factors. I don't have any obligation, I don't have any debt on me, and hence I can afford to take that risk. That is first. Second, you should whether I am prepared to work extra hard. This is certainly not 9 to 5 job.
So when you say risk, risk is a financial risk. Are you saying that initially the startup as a financial compensation wise is less as compared to large conglomerate?
No, financial compensation may be high. You also often get ESOPs in case of startups, which is certainly much more advantageous than monetary compensation. But risk is in terms of, as I said,
sustainability of a business.
Sustainability, right? Let's say 90 out of 100 startups, if are not succeeding, then I mean, anytime, plus funding winter, for example, right? In such situations, they had to downsize. There is nothing bad about it. They have to downsize their staff. So in such situations, it might be very difficult to manage if you have, fixed obligations, your own financial obligations. So I think that is one thing to be kept in mind. The other thing, your own preparedness, whether you are willing to work. I mean, this is not a 9 to 5 job, as I said. Whether you are willing to put those extra efforts, whether you are prepared to work in such constantly changing dynamic environment where things continue to evolve almost every day. So this is another thing I think one consider while making this decision.
And suppose, okay, so I have taken suppose all these 4 to 5 parameters when I have to decide I have to join a startup as a CFO role or multitasking within the CFO role. So based on your experience, once you have joined the organization, what are the 2 shocks which you got with any of the startup which you have done? Okay, you have thought like this is what I am prepared for, and then something turned around the situation.
A very interesting question. In fact, this has happened multiple times. So because you are asking for 2 examples, so let me give you 2 prominent examples that immediately come to my mind. When I joined a startup, it was hit by COVID, right?
Oh.
And the business that startup was into, they had to completely pivot their business model.
Right.
Right? It was a completely new line of business for them. Of course, now that line of business has become a larger part of their business as compared to their original business.
okay.
It has succeeded phenomenally well. But at that time, whoever was working within the company, actually for literally 3 months, the revenue was zero. The business that it was in, the revenue, and this is true. This is true for many companies. In fact, one of the companies where I worked, I was not with the company at that time, but the company where I have worked, at the time of COVID, their revenue was zero because they were only restaurant business.
Right.
Restaurants were completely like nobody was going to restaurant. It was not allowed during
COVID time, right?
So revenue was practically zero, literally zero. At that time, they pivoted to cloud kitchen business.
Right.
And today, the cloud kitchen business contributes to almost 50% of their top line. So it was a decision that was made by force, by the external factors, particularly COVID. But it has proven to be
blessings in disguise.
Exactly. So the shock that you get is that startup can change their business model anytime. Right? That is, I think, one. The other thing is, regulatory environment can change anytime. If this fintech is a good example where you are working on an idea. There are many examples. Like they started their business, it was doing good, product market fit was established, and then suddenly RBI is telling you that hey, you can't do this, right? So that is another shock, that the idea where you are working on, the systems that you have set now, customer is accepting your product, and now suddenly regulator is saying that okay, now you can't do this.
Do the business.
Exactly. So I think there are many such things, like business model keeps on changing due to external factors or the regulatory actions.
You are right.
So I think
that is someone who is into the startup, they're used to it. Let's accept the challenge, because see, acceptability is again, it's very tough, because what I see also, people are reluctant to, they get emotional attachment with the business at times, or the decisions at times. So that's why they basically sometimes they don't accept that okay, it is not working out. So I think that is the emotional attachment has to stay away.
Actually, that's a different situation. Let's say when you start something, you don't find product market fit, consumers are not probably accepting the offering. That's actually yet another challenge, or But here I'm talking about everything is going fine, but because of some COVID or because of some regulatory action, everything is going well. Like you have your forecasts in place, you have your 5-year projections in place, you have your investors in place, and suddenly something comes out of
go for a toss.
Exactly. If let's say you are working on an idea, market is not accepting that idea, you can pivot to some other business model that is still that okay, whatever I'm doing is probably not, market is not probably ready for that.
Right.
But here everything is in place, but suddenly some
external factor affect the business model.
Exactly.
So like product market fit is okay, and the acceptability is important. Even if you are emotionally attached, because then only you will be able to make or build a business out of it. And how about you have mentioned that the bankers or the financiers is not easily available as compared to large conglomerate in startup. So you as a CFO, how do you manage all those? Because always founders will come back to you only ki, okay, Vicky, you tell us, this is my plan, how is your finances, talk about, this is the expansion plan. So what are your learnings out of managing those cash crunches or the business finance crunches versus revenue generating and the need of the business? So how do you manage your finances in especially in startup ecosystem?
See, I think we are now fortunate enough that we have multiple unconventional sources of finance available. Like now we have, I think, complete ecosystem in place in our country. In US, it has always been there. In China, it came long back. But in our country also, now we have many unconventional sources of finance for startups available these days, starting from your venture capitalist, your venture debt, bill discounting facilities, etc. These are available. Of course, conventional sources of finance are not available. Bank loans, term loans, etc. are not available because you don't have cash flows or steady cash flows so as to
Right.
say assets you don't have to kind of provide as a security. But there are many unconventional sources of finance available these days, which startups, of course, take advantage of it. And I think it's not that difficult as it was earlier in
Earlier.
our country to get
Right.
finance for a startup.
Right. So, since you have seen so many startups, you have built and contributed a lot. So, based on your experience, what common five mistakes which you think, and any mistakes which you think, which most of the startups or the finance guy, they do it in the, especially in the early stage of setting up the business, which you think they should take care of it, or as a CFO you should tell to the founders, or maybe educate to the founders, no, this is the right way of manage at times of the finances of the company.
I think the most important thing is being true to yourself.
Right.
That's the most important thing. Be realistic in your projections, in your whatever planning we are doing. It's very important to be realistic about it, right? Of course, we might be very, be very optimistic about any idea, but then it's very important to be realistic about those projections, and hence be very careful in spending every single penny in your business.
Correct.
That's I think very important, and I don't know whether to call it a mistake, but when you are very optimistic about an idea, you spend a lot on it, and then you realize that now you're running out of cash, and then market is also the capital market is
Correct.
not as supportive. So I think that is one thing. If that is
Okay.
one thing to keep in mind. Of course, it's very easy to say in hindsight that we should
Yeah.
not have spent on that idea so much, but I think that is one thing a startup can be very careful about, that where I am spending my money and what is the ROI on it, etc.
Right.
Also, again, it's very important, as I said, it's too important to be true to yourself. Reporting revenues, for example, we saw a few edtech companies where they
Yeah.
started reporting revenues in a much different way. They jacked up their valuation only to realize that these were
Yeah.
not the real revenues.
True,
Right?
true.
I mean, the example is, instead of amortizing the revenue that you are receiving for multiple years, they recorded everything in 1 year.
1 year.
Received high valuations also, and rest is history, we know.
Right.
So I think it's important to follow the right practices in terms of
Right.
accounting, reporting,
Right.
and that helps a lot in deciding how to go about the idea or the future. The other thing I think startups startups often ignore in the initial phase is having the right systems and processes and controls in place. After a lot of leakage, they realize that, okay, let's have this system or
Right.
this control in place. I think it's
Right.
it's a good investment of time and money to have right systems, right controls in place. It should not be a pre-IPO checklist that, okay, I have to say I should have internal audit, or I should have this internal control,
Right.
I should have this ERP. It's not a
Right.
pre-IPO checklist. It has
Correct.
to be there from day one.
Yeah.
Again, these days there are many systems and processes available at a very reasonable price. It's not that investment of money. It's just the right right mindset and right attitude towards these systems and
Correct,
processes
correct.
that is needed to succeed.
Right, because I read somewhere, I mean, one of the senior founder, he said not just for IPOing themselves, yourself, what you need to do is you have to behave like a listed company from the day one of
Exactly.
the startup.
Exactly.
Then only you will reach to that level of IPOing yourself as a listed company. So as you were mentioning, right, that you have to start working from day one, then only, because Rome cannot be built in one day.
Exactly.
Exactly. You can't show papers and then at ground there is nothing. Though we have seen a lot of failed startup, that is one of the reason, because of either a corporate governance issue and maybe lack of focus towards this side and building business ideas more. So that's why. So yeah.
No, certainly, see, founders can continue to focus on business, but when you have finance professionals in place, or the compliance professionals in place, at least give them that liberty and have that attitude to build those systems and processes, and respecting those systems and processes,
Right.
As if you are going to go for IPO next year, right?
Yeah.
Whichever startup I have advised, or wherever I have worked, my single piece of advice or my efforts have always been like that let's build the right systems and processes at whatever stage we are, because one day we are going to go for an IPO. Let's have the right governance practices or controls, etc. So I think that is one thing startups sometimes ignore. while chasing the growth or revenue. Chasing revenue growth is perfectly fine, but I think it's
Right.
equally important to have the right systems, processes in place from day one.
Correct. So, Vicky, one more thing. I mean, since you have a rich experience in F&B industry as such, so apart from, can you just tell us lot on the insight on a day-to-day operations or a planning side, a good planning you can say, which helped you a lot. Like, supposingly, I don't know whether you in a F&B industry you have to see how do you calculate ROI, what do you feel in terms of your experience if someone is investing in F&B business, and a CFO should consider these 5 to 8 parameters in their financial planning so that they have a clear visibility of how much returns they are generating, managing the margins or managing their internal finances. So how, tell us more about F&B in terms of real finance work.
See, F&B in my view is one of the toughest businesses.
I'm
right?
sure, yeah.
In 0 to 1, throughout the book it has been explained by the author. I'm forgetting the name. That how difficult it is to have a restaurant or F&B business. Right? It's very difficult to make margins. Super competitive, labor intensive, capital
Right.
intensive business, and you continuously have to keep yourself. I mean, the business have to continuously reinvent itself to stay competitive.
Yeah.
And therefore it becomes very important for a finance professional to keep an eye on every single metric, starting from the when you are choosing a location, the projected revenue, the projected cash flows, the break even, starting from choosing a location for a cloud kitchen or for a restaurant to day-to-day operations. You always
Right.
have to keep an eye, what are my cash flows. The finance professional has to be watchful every month about the outlet level EBITDA. If your outlet level EBITDA, corporate EBITDA might be negative in the initial phase, but at outlet level, one always have to make sure this is profitable. If outlet level profitability is not getting achieved, finance professional has to step in and start creating a noise that hey, these many outlets or these outlets
Correct.
are not profitable. Right. Another thing is the capex going into outlets. Right. Whenever there has to be a threshold that okay, I can't spend beyond this amount on an outlet. Right. There are always demands from different departments. Say we have to create customer experience, etc. And hence we need to spend so much in capex on an outlet. But then the role of finance comes where we need to tell that hey, we can spend this much, but what is the ROI on it? There are many expenses you incur in capex, but they don't generate any ROI.
Right.
So I think that is, as a finance professional, we need to be always mindful that where my money is going in terms of capex or opex. Right, like any other business, but F&B is particularly difficult, as I said, because of its because of multiple factors.
Correct.
So these are the key factors that I always keep an eye on, that what is my capex going into the outlets or what is my outlet level EBITDA. Gross margins are also equally important, which which is affected by wastages. Your gross margin is basically the sales minus your the direct expenses on food and beverages. So if wastage is out of control, then also if your gross margins are bad, your outlet level margins are bad, and hence your corporate profitability gets affected. So I think all these metrics is gross margins, store EBITDA, and then the corporate EBITDA, the capex, everything has to be very carefully watched throughout the the day-to-day business.
Right. So when you say F&B is difficult, it is like because I was reading somewhere like in India, food and beverage business is little complicated because people are very passionate about their food. Passionate, I mean to say, like north part of India, I want my coffee this way. If I go to maybe south part of India, they want their coffee particularly in this way, right? Probably if we travel to some other part of the world, so they might need their coffee or maybe the food in particular manner. But in India, people are very passionate, right? And they are very serious about like this is the way I want my thing to be there. So, is it? How do you manage this complexity in terms of customer acquisition, in terms of attracting the customers, because it is a highly competitive market? So, what is the USP which you think all of your previous journeys gave you a perspective. Okay, yeah, this is how the restaurants owners or the founders they think like to attract customer or to develop the taste.
No, I think this is very true. Actually, India is not one market from food perspective at least. Like there are many markets within India,
India.
from food perspective at least. That a biryani in North India is much different from a biryani in Hyderabad or other parts of the country. Same is true for coffee. Same is true for many other Gujarati food. In Gujarat is different from the Gujarati food being sold in North India. So I think localization is very important for any food and beverage business. It's very important to ensure or work on the localization of food. You can't sell the same dosa in North India and you can't sell the same dosa in Chennai. So I think localization is one way, and hence that is what makes the business more complex or complicated. That you understand the local taste buds, you have to understand the local preferences, and then work on localization. If you don't work on it, it's very difficult to even stay in business. There are many North Indian players, let's say in biryani, they ventured into in southern markets, let's say, but they couldn't succeed as much as they could succeed in North India. Because of localization. There are local players, incumbent players, they serve in a different, in a particular way, at particular prices and particular quantities. And hence they are completely different markets. Super successful players in one part of the country in food and beverage are not so successful in the other parts. There are many such examples, and that is largely, as you said, the taste preferences of consumers for food are totally different in different parts of the country.
Right. So majorly founders in this ecosystem who is into F&B businesses, are they chef or who they are primarily? Because what I as a layman what I think is food is a science which is done by some chef or who knows cooking, right? So what do you think, founders are good chef or they are the scientist of food, so that is how they can get the food made in their own taste and then get it developed or create such market?
No, I think at least the founders I know in this industry are not the chefs. Like they understand the food business well. They understand the markets in general well. They understand the business very well, but they are not necessarily, not necessarily the chefs or have some historical background with food or beverage industry. In that sense, it's easy business. Like you need not to be you need not to be an expert at this particular domain to start this business. There are so many people who understand the business well and who just understand the business administration well, have started business and doing well.
Right. So cooking is not a
prerequisite. certainly not.
Right. Got it. And since we are talking a lot on the startup side, and I'm sure there must be a lot of disruption which has happened in this industry, right? So how this industry has evolved in last 5 to 10 years, when you see this F&B space maybe in the era of 2014 to 19 or 20 otherwise, and now what has changed? Is it like focus on delivery, customer experience has changed a lot, or is there any deep tech involved in this entire system, or how it is?
No, honestly, a few important changes that this industry has witnessed in last 5, 7 or probably 10 years is the advent of cloud kitchens. Now, earlier there was no concept of cloud kitchen. In fact, the concept of cloud kitchen really become prominent after COVID. So there was no concept of cloud kitchen. Whenever we wanted food, we went to restaurants or ordered from restaurants, and cloud kitchen was not so much prevalent. Nowadays, cloud kitchen business as a business is growing very rapidly. People are ordering food at home, and that is a one big change, I would say, that has taken place in last few years. The other change is largely driven by the increase in per capita income or GDP for country. Now people want branded, people order from good brands. People prefer to order from good brands now.
Right.
That is, I think, a behavioral change that is
Has happened.
slowly and gradually taking place, particularly in so-called Gen Zs or millennials.
Yeah.
That change is that change is visible among among all of us. That now we think, instead of if I have to order a pizza, I would prefer to order from a brand instead of ordering from a nearby mom and pop store.
okay,
So I think that is we have become more quality conscious, probably health conscious, etc.
Right.
So I think these are the two major shifts that this industry has witnessed in
Correct.
last few years.
True. And how about, I have recently read somewhere Mr. Piyush Goyal, who is a minister in India. So he has compared a controversial thing, like he has compared few of the startups which are, I'm sure, doing well in India versus the expectation of the government, which he has compared Indian startups with the China startups. So what I take his point of view is, in a way, that government willing to do or contribute or support startups, but that should contribute to the overall innovation, I think. So what is the definition of startup as per you, and how do you agree with the statement or the comparison which Mr. Piyush Goyal has done recently in one of the startup Mahakumbh event in front of all the startup founders?
No, in fact, there are multiple aspects to whatever Honorable Minister said. First of all, India's spend on research and development as a percentage of GDP is anywhere between 0.6 to 0.7%. Whereas in China, this number is close to 2.4%, more than 2.4%.
It's double,
right? It's
double or thrice the what India
four
is.
times.
4 times.
And in absolute terms, it will be even bigger. The GDP of China is almost 4 to 5 times more than that of India.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this comparison is not at least fair. The spend on research and development India as a country is doing is far less than what China is doing. So I don't think this is a fair comparison, first of all. Second, it's not necessarily bad to work on consumer-centric products, right? These businesses also create employment. These businesses also generate wealth. These businesses also
contributing to the GDP.
Exactly. So I don't think it is necessarily bad to be in this business. Is what he said, that we are only doing dukandari. I don't see anything bad with doing dukandari, right? Because eventually, what our country needs, we are a country of 1.4 billion. One of the most important things we need is employment, right? And these businesses are generating employment. These businesses are generating wealth. So I don't necessarily see anything. Of course, it is good to be in deep tech businesses. The third aspect that I was coming to is, it's not that all startups are working on consumer-centric business. Of course, the startups that have become big or got the attention of people are the consumer-centric businesses, but there are equally a good number of startups who are working on deep tech, agri-tech, the space technology, the drone technology, the defense technology. So I think there are multiple aspects to what he said, and I believe that slowly and gradually, if R&D spend increases in India, if GDP grows as it is in China today, we will also have similar innovations in our country as well.
Right. Fair. I mean, I think you rightly said that some startups might have got more attention because they are highly consumer-centric, but there are so many other startups who are at the back end, and sometimes if they were procuring real sense, the manufacturing was not happening earlier, but now a lot of startups are doing a real manufacturing in India nowadays.
Well, you see, there are startups like Sarla Aviation. They are working on flying cars. Now, very few people know about that startup because it is not yet come in public domain. So it's incorrect to say, and there are many such startups by the way working on drone technology, agri-tech, etc. Just that they don't catch the attention of general public.
That's why maybe.
So I think it's not completely fair comparison.
No, right, true. And Vicky, like we were talking about on the IPOing journey of lot of startups, and for IPOing there has to be a good corporate governance, not only for IPOing but otherwise also. But when someone is going for IPO, there has to be a very strong corporate governance, because then there is an extra regulatory check which comes in. But recently we have seen a lot of startups, there is a controversy happened, and there is a spark discussion happening, like even the successful startup founders got trapped into this what you say, not a good corporate governance. So what is your take? Because we know recently many instances have happened around it. Those are equally large, what you so to say, the companies, the startup companies. So how important it is to set a corporate governance as a CFO in a particular startup company?
No, certainly, it's very important because such instances, first of all, shake the confidence of investors. Then, even
Right.
for the customers, as a customers, we also lose faith in startups.
Correct.
Now, one of the cab companies that recently
Yeah.
failed, many of my friends had deposited their money in their
Yeah.
wallets. Now,
True.
all of them are worried that I have a few thousands in their wallet and I was
Correct.
using the services.
Right.
How will I? Whether will I get my money back? When will I? So, this type of uncertainty actually shakes the confidence of consumers on the whole startup ecosystem. They would prefer to work with large conglomerates instead of working with a startup. As a consumer, I'm talking about. Let's say, instead of working with a fintech, I would prefer to work with some Google Pay or some other bank. So I think it's very important for everyone associated with startup ecosystem, be it finance professionals or be it founders. It's very important to maintain the integrity and high standards of governance, because this shakes the whole system, the confidence on the whole system. The confidence of the investor is certainly shaken. So I think it's very important, and instead of being myopic, these were some of these startups were very successful. Not that they were not doing well; they were doing well, and they had bright future in my view. The cab company or the car service company, some of the fintechs in Bangalore. So they had really bright future. It's just that they chose to be myopic. The short-term vision, I would say.
Right.
Had they been, if they would have taken a long-term view, I'm sure these were going to be super successful startups in future.
Right. Right.
So I think it's important to have the long-term vision instead of being myopic, and having right systems, governance helps everyone in the ecosystem, not only the founders.
Oh, very true. Very true. So, all right. So, one question I often heard, when I talk to a lot of CFOs is like, what is you have mentioned, like when you work in startups, right? So it is every day it is a new challenge, right? Versus the large conglomerate. So the CFO of a large conglomerate, they feel themselves when they reach to the level of a CFO, then group CFO, and what more next for them. So is it like the same feeling comes similarly into once you become a group CFO of a startup? So is it like the same feeling? Because I think they feel a peak. There is nothing beyond they can go. Is it like the same feeling in startup as well?
Fortunately not, because because the world is, as I said, continuously changing and dynamic. There were, let's say, financial instruments. For if I talk about CFO specifically, there were some financial instruments which were not there earlier. There are ERPs or systems in place which were not there earlier, right? So these things continuously challenge you, keeps you excited, keeps you motivated. So I don't think at any age or after achieving any particular designation, you think that okay, now ab maza nahi aa raha.
There is nothing more to do.
I think it's more about personality. Let's say people like my role model, Mr. Deepak Parekh, he is still actively involved in multiple things. He's still assisting government on multiple projects, etc. So I think until you yourself think that अब बहुत हो गया, I don't think ऐसा कभी भी होता है, because world is continuously changing. It throws challenges at you. It's up to you how you take those challenges and how exciting you make them for yourselves.
Right. So is it like there is no bored feeling once you're done?
Never.
So it is.
At least in finance, I really find it exciting. Like every time you approach any particular problem, there are multiple ways to solve it, and picking up the right solution is always exciting.
Right. So you also follow the same approach, because a lot of CFOs or maybe someone in the finance tax position of a startup versus large conglomerate, when they have to do a financing, they go for a consultant, and then in large corporate it is a settled position. Okay, you have to take 2-3 opinions and then rely on the external consultants on few of the aspects. But in startups, they take lot of calls or decisions in-house, and they feel and they have privilege or the bold but you say supporting or the backing from the founders or the large reporting authorities. So is it a change of the ownership between both the set of work or a places, or how it is?
No, in startups you always have limited resources. You can't afford to have 3 or 4 opinions from consultant, then pick one of them. I mean, in startups we don't have that luxury because of limited resources.
Right.
Second, the areas in which startups work have very limited precedents. Right. For example, many fintechs started a particular business, then RBI told them to shut that, etc. Now, if they would have taken some opinion from someone, I don't think anyone would have been able to tell you that what you are doing is
going to
right,
happen,
wrong,
yeah.
because there was no precedent. These are new businesses. Let's say if flying taxis come, right? You don't have any regulation. There is no precedent.
You're right.
Which consultant is going to tell you that okay, this is the right regulatory framework for a flying taxi that you should follow?
Right.
So I think because these are two factors which makes it difficult for a startup to get some external opinion, and hence they have to make certain decisions with some regulatory foresight,
Correct.
etc. And then they make decisions on their own, which is I think okay, because
Right.
even if you take an external opinion for a consultant, also it's difficult to say what is the right path to follow for them in that particular situation.
Yeah, I think the differentiation factor between is here there is a lot of liberty which is given to a CFO or a senior guys.
Absolutely.
Not CFO is like any senior
Anyone,
person,
yes,
and
yes.
they trust more, or they are
Exactly.
more cautious in terms of okay, let's do it. Let's trust our instincts also, because that is a kick versus startup versus a large conglomerate.
Exactly,
Right?
and when you are creating new markets, you can't always afford to be very cautious about everything.
Right.
You always have to think that okay, let me create a market,
Right.
and then let's see what happens. So many fintechs have done that, have been successful also.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
there was
very
there was
true.
no food aggregator business a few years back, as we
Right.
just discussed. Right?
Right.
Now it is so big that now whatever regulations comes, I think they will be able to absorb.
Absorb, right. True. And also, Vicky, sometimes I have heard a lot now, I think CFOs in startups, so I am very clear in my mind, like CFOs, they treat, I mean, nowadays they have become a co-pilot to a founder, or in a large conglomerate, they treat this as a co-pilot, right? So as a CFO, it is very important to have a business knowledge, follow what's happening geopolitically, because nowadays geopolitical thing is also affecting a lot, right? So do you think it is a real important aspect to keep a check what's happening geopolitically, or a business how affecting? So how it is as a CFO, you think it is important to keep a track, and how someone can do it on a regular basis?
No, certainly. See, traditionally, ever since beginning, we have been taught that the primary duty of finance manager is to ensure that the financial resources of the company are invested in such a way that you get the maximum ROI out of it. This is traditionally the duty of a finance manager.
Right.
Now, the world where we are living is so interconnected due to globalization and other factors that you have to have deep understanding of everything that is happening in your surrounding, be it within the country or on a geopolitical front. Whatever is happening will impact your finances and will help you perform your duty of making sure that the financial resources are invested in such a way that the wealth of shareholders is getting maximized.
Correct.
To achieve this one single objective, you have to learn your business, your markets, your economy, the geopolitical risks and everything, largely due to globalization and many other factors. So regulatory foresight, the business, the markets, the competition, unless you understand everything, it's very difficult for a CFO or any finance professional to ensure that the financial resources are invested in such a way that shareholders wealth gets maximized.
Right.
So to achieve that objectives, it has become imperative to understand all
of
what
these
you said.
aspects, right? And see, our finances or the talent is very complicated to manage. So even the large companies are facing a high attrition rate, or it is hard to find a talent. And I'm sure it comes with lot of challenge in startup ecosystem also, because of, as you said, it's a finance management. You have to choose a right resource. You cannot, I'm sure, cannot give a long time to just test whether that resource is performing or the team is performing or not. So how difficult it is to do a talent management, retention, attraction within this startup ecosystem?
See, so far as retention is concerned, you talk to anyone, they would say that they don't leave their company, or they don't leave their organization. It is the manager who they are leaving, right? And hence, for any leader or anyone to whom there is a team reporting to him or her, it's very important for them to ensure that you are able to retain your people. It is not the duty of HR or the duty of the organization to ensure that the attrition rate in your team is low or zero.
Right, right.
So I think that aspect becomes very important, particularly in finance, where stability of people is very important.
Correct, correct.
Right? You can't afford to have team changing on every, on a frequent basis.
Right.
So I personally make sure that my team is happy when they are working with me.
Right.
So as a manager, I think I try to perform that duty, and it's very important not only for finance professional but for anyone in the organization to whom or her there is a team reporting to them.
Yeah.
It's very important to ensure that you provide them the right incentives to work with you.
Correct, correct.
Starting from work-life balance to learning opportunities, and many other things
Facts.
many other factors play an important role in ensuring that the attrition rates are low in your team. And it is responsibility, I think, it is the responsibility of every team leader, not necessarily the HR alone.
Because I was reading one of related to this, an interesting facts related to his organization, even after offering a fancy cafeterias, a free of cost items, food items, doing outstation offsites, planning lot of parties once in a month or twice in a month. Even then, they fail to retain talent. I think this is the perfect example which you are saying. No, it is the response. Despite doing everything by the organization, people are leaving. It means it is not working out, and this is not the way of attracting the talent or retaining the talent. Time has, I think, changed. A lot of people, they want a work-life balance.
Yes.
One aspect, a lot of learning opportunities, fair assessments and all.
Absolutely.
I think that is really important and
Absolutely.
helpful.
Absolutely.
And even it is same in startups, right?
Absolutely.
Despite having so much of challenges, you can say, or
Absolutely.
new things happens.
And I think every team leader or everyone who is managing a team can play that role effectively more than anybody else in the organization to ensure that your team is happy. They should be happy about coming to office. It should not be a burden for them. And how can you do it? Multiple ways, right? You can provide them work-life balance. You can provide them the right set of resources to work with. You can provide them learning opportunities to grow, provide them the right a path to grow within the organization. Right. And I think these are the steps a team leader can take to ensure that the team is stable.
Right. Great. I mean, it's a lot
in hiring, my philosophy is hire the ordinary people and make them extraordinary. It's not necessary to hire the extraordinary people.
So what do you do? I mean, Vicky, just suppose I am an ordinary people and you have hired me. So I think there is a lot of things which you have mentioned apart from giving opportunities and all. So how differently you treat your teams at times, and what you think it is relevant, and for doing an assessment, how quick and fast you do assessment or observe things, and then silently observing this is like shortcoming or this is the area of improvement in someone. And directly at times people take initiatives to communicate. So what is your way of attracting, retaining a talent? Suppose if I am newly joined to your team.
No, retaining though, I said that I always keep them engaged, I try to provide them work-life balance as well. Try to provide them opportunities to learn and grow.
Right.
I give them complete freedom to make decisions in their own area instead of micromanaging. So these are a couple of things that I do to kind of ensure high retention levels.
Right.
And anyone who works in my team would always want to work with me even if I leave the organization. So this has been my experience. So this has worked for me. Right. Providing them freedom, right resources, work-life balance, etc. Regarding attracting the talent, the most important thing I see in an individual is their approach and attitude towards work more than the technical competence, etc. Technical competence can be taught. right? But if you don't have the right, I mean, integrity is something, another
It's important.
factor that I try to see in a candidate when I, talk to them. So I think बंदा सही होना चाहिए.
True, true.
काम तो फिर भी सीख
सीख
सकता
जाएगा,
है.
right.
हाँ, so I
Very,
think
very
this is my philosophy for recruiting in
Very
my
true.
team.
Very true. Very true. Thanks a lot, Vicky. I mean, that brings to an end, and now I have my favorite section in the entire shoot is that rapid fire. I have few questions for you. So, what is more difficult to manage? It is investor or a founder?
In fact, both, but it depends. Like, who is more difficult?
So investor is little fussy in terms of doing lot of intervention in the routine activities, or how it is?
No, as I said, it completely depends. If there are investors who give you complete freedom and they are only concerned with certain key matrices in the business, and at the same time there are investors who would always get involved in your business and try to kind of help you or teach you
Yeah.
that you should do this thing in a particular way. But I think both are equally important.
True. Leaders who inspire you most?
I think Mr. Deepak Parekh, the founder and ex-chairman of HDFC.
Right. So what is like the inspiration which you get from?
I think his simplicity is something I admire a lot. Despite running the, I think, 5th largest financial institution of the globe, his simplicity is something I admire a lot. His deep understanding of the financial concepts and a deep understanding of economy. These things really inspire me a lot.
Right. All right. I think a lot of good talk today, and then we learned like how CFOs have to decide when they have to shift from large conglomerate to startup. What are the key learnings or the fun or the kick which someone is joining in the startup? So thanks a lot, Vicky, for your time today. I think it is really meaningful to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Same here.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.